So when they were making the original Star Wars, Carrie Fisher came out in her Princess Leia costume, and George Lucas looked at her and said, "You can't wear a bra under that dress." And she was like, "Why not?" And he said, "Because there's no underwear in space." Like, A+ on the commitment to the movie, but that's a little creepy. Toy Story 2 was almost deleted. Like, we were this close to just not having this at all because somebody fucked up and erased 90% of the movie. And then they went to check and the backup drive failed. Like, the only reason we have this is because a worker was on maternity leave and had a copy of the movie at home. For one of the scenes in Poltergeist, actress Jo Beth Williams had to swim around in the mud and shit with like bones and skulls and stuff, but what she didn't know at the time was those were not props. Those are real fucking dead bodies because it was cheaper to buy from the medical supply center than it was to buy rubber corpses. So they had this girl swimming with fucking dead people and they didn't tell her until afterwards. If that was me, I would have fucking killed everyone there. For the movie Titanic, when Kate Winslet found out that she had to be naked in front of Leonardo DiCaprio, when they first met, she decided to break the ice a little bit and flash him some titties. O.J. Simpson was considered for the role of the Terminator, but producers felt that he was too nice to be taken seriously as the cold-blooded killer. They were wrong. So most people now know that Chadwick Boseman just passed away and that he was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2016. But that means that he made 7 fantastic movies while battling cancer. Like, that's fucking insane. And his final movie is actually coming out on Netflix later this year, so make sure you check that out. While they were filming the movie Stand By Me, the cast and crew decided to attend a Renaissance fair and buy some cookies. Unfortunately though, they turned out to be pot cookies, and about 2 hours later, the actor who played Vern was found crying in a park somewhere, stoned out of his fucking 11-year-old mind. Bill Murray signed the contract to play Garfield before even reading the script because he mistaked the writer for somebody else. Which makes his line in Zombieland when he's asked, "Do you have any regrets?" Garfield, maybe, make way more sense. While they were filming the Avengers movies, anytime Robert Downey Jr. is snacking, this isn't scripted. In fact, they actually paid people to try and find his snacks and throw them away. But he hid them so well on set that he's able just to record, pick them up, and start eating. And that is dedication. Adult jokes in kids' movies that you missed because you were a stupid, oblivious child. I can guarantee this one flew over your head, okay? In Finding Nemo, Nemo's talking about his tiny fin or whatever, and Pearl's like, "Oh, it's okay, I have a tiny tentacle." But in real life, octopus have one tiny tentacle because that's their dick. Pearl was showing off her penis. Toy Story 1, we get a look at Sid's mutilated and destroyed toys, okay? And this one is a fishing hook with female legs. It's a hooker. When Shrek, they get to Lord Farquaad's castle, and it's like huge, okay? And he's like, "Oh, do you think maybe he's compensating for something?" And as a kid, I just thought it was like a short joke, but it was definitely a penis joke. Okay, so I can't really talk about exactly what's going on right now, but something really exciting is happening within the next few days, so be sure you keep an eye on my Instagram and my YouTube for any announcement type things. Yeah, thanks. Adult jokes in kids' movies that you missed because you were a stupid, oblivious child. In Shrek, Lord Farquaad is laying in bed and asks the mirror to see a picture of the princess. Fiona appears, and then you can see a small bulge under the blanket. Lord Farquaad got a boner. In the movie Cars, there's a billboard for Top Down Truck Stop with all convertible waitresses. At the end of Toy Story 2, Jesse performs this like really cool stunt that impresses Buzz, and his wings pop out in excitement. Adult jokes in kids' movies that you missed because you were a stupid, oblivious child. At the beginning of Robots, Herb Copperbottom rushes home because he's about to be a dad, and the wife's like, "Oh honey, I'm so sorry, you missed the delivery," and he's all disappointed, but she's like, "Oh, it's okay, making the baby is the fun part. Look, doubloons, don't drop them." Nickelodeon slipped in a fucking prison rape joke. In Emperor's New Groove, Kronk literally pitches a tent above his crotch.
It's all coming together.
Adult jokes in kids' movies that you missed because you were a stupid, oblivious child. In the movie Ratatouille, Alfredo gets caught talking to Remy in the freezer, but he can't be like, "Oh yeah, I was talking to the rat," so he's like, "Oh, I'm just familiarizing myself with the vegetables." So Chef Skinner has to remind him that one can get too familiar with vegetables, if you know what I mean. Jimmy Neutron was a Nickelodeon show with too many adult jokes to count, but by far my favorite one was when Jimmy's dad came out as a little bit fruity because he sat on a banana when he was 7, and of course, it changed his life. As a kid watching The Road to El Dorado, I was like, "Oh my god, Shell and Tulio got caught kissing, that's crazy," but as an adult, I know that she is nowhere near his face. Movie scenes that ended up going horribly wrong. In Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, there's a scene where they go through the Wonka wash and they use candy foam to clean the vehicle. But it's not candy foam. That doesn't exist. So they used fire extinguisher foam, which ended up getting all the actors sick and they had to cancel production for a couple weeks. In The Wizard of Oz, they do a magic trick to have the Wicked Witch escape Munchkinland, but during one of the takes, the actress's cape got stuck on the trap door, and when the flames went up, her flammable makeup ended up causing second-degree burns. In the last Harry Potter movie, Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double, David Holmes, was performing an aerial trick when an explosion ended up throwing him against a wall, breaking his neck and back. And for the past 11 years, he's been paralyzed from the chest down. 3 movie mistakes that ended up making the final cut. In How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Jim Carrey was supposed to walk over the table, pull the tablecloth, and have everything go flying. But somehow, that didn't happen, so he improvised, ran over, and pushed everything off, and it was just too good not to put in the movie. In Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf enters Bilbo's hobbit hole, he accidentally hits his head on everything. The chandelier, the low ceiling beam, and Peter Jackson thought it was just so funny, so he kept it in. In Thor Dark Worlds, Thor very casually and very politely hangs up his hammer on the coat rack, which wasn't in the script, and it sparked this whole debate online about whether the coat rack was worthy. New Disney movie Encanto. In the background of Bruno's place, you can very clearly see a boot with a plant in it. Right there. Which is a nice little callback to the plant in WALL-E. And in the movie Moana, one of the first monsters they show looks exactly like Marshmallow from Frozen. And in The Incredibles 2, which came out in 2018, we get to see a lot of Jack-Jack's powers. Some of which include telekinesis, laser vision, and being able to just pop in and out of different dimensions. Which makes this scene from Monsters, Inc., which was made in 2001, just a little bit more interesting.
I tried to run from it, but it picked me up with its mind powers and shook me like a doll.
Some movie mistakes that you didn't even notice. So in Marvel's Doctor Strange, when he's literally performing brain surgery, nobody's wearing masks. The first Pirates of the Caribbean movie is supposed to be set in about 1720s, 1760s, like that era, okay? So why the fuck is there a cowboy? They're supposed to exist for another 150 years. So in Twilight, Edward and Bella have sex. But Edward's a vampire, which means he's not supposed to, like, have a heartbeat. And without a heartbeat, how are you getting an erection to even have sex? And his body temperature is, like, super low, so sperm production isn't really what it's supposed to be. So how is Bella getting pregnant? This is a formal trigger warning. Here are some of the worst prosthetics that actors had to endure. Robin Williams said that for his role in Popeye, he had to go through 90 minutes of makeup a day, but that his forearms were the worst part. He said that they would tie my arms up like a junkie for the fight scenes, and that when I had to ask for a bit of blood, they would release my arms until the circulation came back, and then just tie me up again. Ian Coletti has to have his face covered up all day to play the character of Eugene Root, aka Arseface, a character in the show Preachers who was horribly disfigured after a suicide attempt. He said that there's not a whole lot of time to eat, that he has to be in the chair by 2 a.m. and doesn't get to go home until 10 p.m. Said that throughout the day he would be able to drink protein shakes, but that this was the saddest form of method acting that he's ever had to do. Jennifer Lawrence has said that if she was given the offer, she would consider coming back to play Mystique in a 4th X-Men movie, but that she doesn't necessarily want to, saying that inhaling all the fumes that made her achieve this look made her sick. Elf, Will Ferrell's character Buddy has to test out some Jack-in-the-Boxes that he's absolutely terrified of because of the jump scare. And this reaction is genuine because the director was sitting off camera with a remote, just having them randomly pop out to scare him. In the movie Home Alone, the actor Daniel Stern had to have a tarantula put on his face, and he wasn't given a whole lot of heads up beforehand. So he was like, but aren't tarantulas poisonous? Yes. But won't that kill me? Not if you don't scare the spider, but I have to be screaming. Isn't that gonna scare the spider? Spiders don't have ears. And he was like, okay, and so we got this iconic scene. In the movie Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man gets hit with a big blast of water. Crazy, like he did a great job acting all wet, right? His stunt double actually got hit with all that water. In the movie Jaws, they decided not to tell the actress who's the first person to get attacked that there was going to be a machine in the water that was going to actually attack her and pull her under. So her screams of just pure terror are as real as they can be. In the movie The Princess Bride, there's a scene where Wesley has to get knocked out, but they weren't able to get it to look as realistic as they wanted it to, so he was like, hit me. Just hit me with this very real metal sword in the head. And they did, and he woke up in the hospital. But at least the scene looks good. In the movie The Wizard of Oz, when the group is sent to go kill the Witch of the West, the Scarecrow straight up brings a gun. Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader says Obi-Wan has taught you well when he looks up and sees that Luke has the high ground. Mr. Incredible's original suit is blue, and Elastigirl's original suit is red. So they named their first kid Violet. It's too good! Incredibles, when Helen thinks Bob is cheating on her, she punches Mirage, but you can also see that she tries to punch him too, but he dodges it. In the movie Soul, the first Soul assigned number is 108,210,121,415. And this is interesting because it actually lines up with PRB's total estimate of number of humans that have ever lived. In the original trilogy, Luke tells R2 to stay on the ship multiple times, but he never listens because the last person to tell R2 to stay on the ship was Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith, and he never came back. Mary Gibbs, the girl that played Boo in Monsters Inc., was so little when they were making the movie that it was hard to keep her in the recording studio, so they decided to just follow her around with a microphone, cut in the lines, and add in whatever random child noises she made. In Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, Shaggy's able to find his fanboys by actually smelling the weed coming off of them. In Jojo Rabbit, imaginary Hitler is seen offering cigarettes to Jojo and eating meat, but in reality, Hitler was strongly opposed to smoking and a vegetarian, implying that Jojo knew very little about Hitler. Dark Knight, the Joker is constantly licking his lips to the point that it's part of like the Joker character now, but this is only because Heath Ledger was wearing prosthetic scars that he had to lick to keep from falling off. In Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, you can see that Miles' spider sense goes off like a split second after Peter and Gwen's. The Chinese restaurant at the end of A Christmas Story is called Bo Ling's Chop Suey Palace, but only because the place used to be a bowling alley and the W went out. Movie Baby Driver, they were actually supposed to get the Halloween Michael Myers masks, but they couldn't get the rights to it, so they asked Michael Myers from Austin Powers if they could use his face instead, and he said okay, and I think the fact that the joke is real makes it even funnier. The sounds the velociraptors make in Jurassic Park is actually just turtles fucking. In Rocky IV, Sylvester Stallone wanted the fight to look as real as possible, so he told the dude to actually hit him, and he ended up in the ICU for 4 days. Toy Story, Woody's famous line, "There's a snake in my boot," was actually a very common hallucination that alcoholics would get in the 19th century. In the movie Dumb and Dumber, Lloyd's chipped tooth is real. Apparently, when Jim Carrey was in detention in high school, some kid jumped on his head and chipped it, and so for the movie, he just took off the cap to look dumb. In The Goonies, the actor that played Chunk got the chicken pox, but didn't tell anybody because he was afraid that he was going to get recasted. So in this iconic scene where he lifts up his shirt, you can actually see the chicken pox. In Now You See Me, there's a magic trick where Isla Fisher has to get chained and put in an underwater tank. And in the scene, she struggles a bit, she can't get out, and appears to be drowning. This is real. Isla Fisher says that the chains got stuck at the bottom and she was actually drowning and nobody had any idea until a stuntman thought it was going on a little too long and saved her life. I genuinely feel sorry for Ken in the Bee movie. You're telling me if a bee stole your girlfriend and then gaslit you into thinking you were crazy, you wouldn't do the same thing? I don't agree with Syndrome's methods of violence and kidnapping a baby, but his message of if everybody's super, then nobody isn't wrong. You would think Pixar would want to spread the message of, oh, you can be special too if you work hard enough, but instead they just say some people are born special and some people aren't. If you try to fight against that, you're just jealous. Otto from WALL-E isn't really a villain. He's just an AI following his programming. Protect humans, don't let them go back to Earth. Like, finding this plant isn't proof that this planet is habitable. One plant out of the trillion tons of garbage and rooting for them to go back? Like, the planet is just starting to heal itself, and I don't think the cannibalistic milkshake drinking bitches learned the errors of their ways. Binge watched all the Cars movies recently, and I unfortunately have some questions. So hopefully y'all remember Sarge. He's a 1942 Willys Army Jeep. These things were specifically made for World War II. Does that imply that somewhere in the Cars universe there exists a car Hitler? Because if so, does that mean that there was a Cars Holocaust? Because then you gotta start thinking about the Jewish vehicles. Like, how do you circumcise a car? My guess is that they trim the exhaust pipe, but I don't know. And before you sit there and call me crazy, I need you to remember that the car Pope is canon, which means that there was once a car Jesus that died for the car sins. Probably looks something like this. If there's a car Pope, that means that Catholicism is going strong and has millions of followers, or should I say car-Catholicism, which implies car pedophiles. I haven't even scratched the surface on all the crazy things that Pixar implies with the Cars universe, so make sure you like for a part 2. Okay, I understand that it's a kid's movie and I'm probably overanalyzing it, but if it's not supposed to have that many details, why does it have that many details? Why do the cars have doors and door handles? Who is getting in and out of them? Are they just pockets? Why does the Cars universe need a school bus? Is there school? Do kids get inside of her? And like, where do baby cars come from? And do they grow up or stay the same? Because there's definitely older cars, but not all new cars are kids. And they're implying that this is mom and this is dad, but like, how? And what's the difference between a boy car and a girl car? And don't you dare say nothing, because there are very blatant gender differences. This car has a mustache and this one has a tramp stamp. I'm not judging, I'm just saying. Like, at first I thought it was the headlights. I was like, okay, maybe girls can flash theirs and boys have stickers, but that's just the race cars, so it doesn't make sense. But I need it to make sense. And I swear to God, this isn't even all my questions, so like for a part 3. We've all seen The Lion King and remember the scene where Scar kills Mufasa, and that Simba finds Mufasa dead and is told to run away. But then we never see what happens to Mufasa's body. You might just assume that the hyenas ate it, but in real life, hyenas don't eat lions. The only thing that eat lions is other lions. And then we fast forward to Scar playing around in some bones and hold up a skull that looks a whole lot like a lion's skull. Scar ate Mufasa! In the movie Ratatouille, we get Anton Ego's flashback scene to his childhood eating his mother's food, and we get to see a lot of his house, and even get to see his mother. But everything there is just way too similar to the old woman's house that we see at the beginning of the film. Like, even the chair is the same. And Anton Ego says that he loves Remy's food because it reminds him of his mother's cooking. And that's because Remy learned how to cook from Ego's mom! So everybody remembers in Harry Potter how unkind and cruel the Dursleys are to Harry, and we just chalk it up to them being awful people. But if you remember how Harry, Ron, and Hermione's mood changed after being around the Horcrux for too long, and if you remember that Harry is a Horcrux himself, then it kind of makes sense that the people that were around Harry for years would be affected by this and just be fucking assholes all the time. 3 times when actors weren't acting. In the movie Home Alone, the actor Daniel Stern had to have a tarantula put on his face, and he wasn't given a whole lot of heads up beforehand. So he was like, but aren't tarantulas poisonous? Yes. But won't that kill me? Not if you don't scare the spider, but I have to be screaming. Isn't that gonna scare the spider? Spiders don't have ears. And he was like, okay, and so we got this iconic scene. In the movie Zoolander, Zoolander asks, why are male models being used for evil? And JP gives a very long, lengthy, full answer. But in that time, actor Ben Stiller forgot his lines, so he just repeated himself. But why male models? And it fit his airheaded character so well that they just kept it in the movie. In the movie The Princess Bride, there's a scene where Wesley has to get knocked out, but they weren't able to get it to look as realistic as they wanted it to, so he was like, hit me. Just hit me with this very real metal sword in the head. And they did, and he woke up in the hospital. But at least the scene looks good. 3 times that actors weren't acting. In the show The Fresh Prince, Will is supposed to be giving a very powerful speech about how his TV show character dad abandoned him, but considering that his real life dad did the same exact thing, the emotions feel a lot more real than something that was just made for TV. In the movie Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man gets hit with a big blast of water! Crazy! Because it was recently revealed that the movie The Blind Side was complete BS and that the family didn't even actually adopt Michael and they cut him out of the movie profits entirely, I thought it might be interesting to go over what other Hollywood true stories were fake. Catch Me If You Can is not the true story of a real fake. Frank Abagnale didn't do anything that the movie said he did. He was still a con man, though, convincing Hollywood to make this fictional biography about himself, which honestly kind of just makes me like the movie more. The Greatest Showman portrayed P.T. Barnum as this great old guy just helping out the weirdos while singing a little song and dance, when in reality, he was a major douchebag that abused and profited off other people's work and abnormalities. And honestly, just any historical movie that Mel Gibson has worked on. Braveheart is full of inaccuracies. The Patriot shouldn't have been shown in school. And The Passion of the Christ has some shady source material. Details that most people missed. And Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man's apology video has more dislikes than it has views. Relatable. In The Truman Show, all of the trees are in straight lines in rows, showing that it's a man-made forest and not a natural one. In the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Mario and Luigi try to stop flooding in Brooklyn and they break through a wall, and the hole they leave is the same shape as the original game Mario's pixelated head. They definitely forgot to fix that hole though, because Brooklyn is currently, actually flooding.